The moment Clara Bennett tried to run, the whole town turned into a pack of wolves. The sun hung low over Redemption Creek, glowing red like a warning fire in the sky. Dust choked the air. Men lined the main street shoulder to shoulder, their boots planted in the dirt as if they owned the very ground beneath her feet. The wooden platform creaked under Clara's weight, her bare toes gripping the edge while her heart raced like a trapped animal. Every breath felt stolen. Every second felt borrowed. Silas Crow slammed his gavel against the crate beside him. His slick grin stretched across his face as he turned to the crowd. "Gentlemen, you're looking at the finest piece to cross this town in years. A rare flower, untouched, unspoiled." Clara's stomach twisted. Her once light blue dress hung in ripped shreds, the color barely visible beneath the dirt from her long captivity. Her fingers dug into the post beside her to stay standing. Her lashes trembled. The welt on her cheek from Crow's earlier slap throbbed like fire. She didn't look like a flower. She looked like prey, and they looked hungry. Clara had been traveling west to meet her father in California when bandits raided her wagon train. They killed everyone except her. She had prayed they kept her alive because they planned to ransom her. She learned the truth the moment Crow dragged her into town. They planned to sell her. "Who'll start the bidding at $50? Crow called, his voice sharp as a whip crack. 75, 100, 120, 150. Each number hit her like a blow. A price tag on her life. A number on her skin. Clara's hands shook. Her throat tightened. And something inside her snapped. She bolted. She flew down the steps, her feet hitting the dirt, her legs pumping with a speed she didn't know she still had. Hope flared bright and wild inside her chest. If she reached the alley, if she reached the saloon, if she reached anyone. The girl's running. Rough hands caught her before she crossed the street. One grabbed her wrist, another tangled in her hair. A bearded man slammed her back against the steps so hard her vision blurred. "Thought you could run, did ya?" he growled. Crow stormed down, grabbed his leather strap, and cracked it across Clara's back. Pain ripped through her like lightning. She cried out, her knees buckling. The crowd laughed. Something inside Clara broke. It wasn't the pain. It was the sound of that laughter. Crow dragged her back up the platform, forced her chin up, and sneered at the men below. "Now that the entertainment's done, let's get serious." 175. "Do I hear 200? Voices erupted. 200, 250, 300, 400. Clara's breath came in shallow gasps. She didn't fight anymore. There was nothing left to fight with. 450, 475, 480. Crow's grin spread wide. His pockets were about to fill. His hand clamped on Clara's arm so tightly she felt her pulse fade beneath his fingers. Then a voice cut through the chaos like a clean, cold blade. 500. The crowd fell silent. Heads turned. A tall man stood at the back, a cowboy built like the land itself, weathered and solid. Dust clung to his dark blue shirt and leather chaps. His hat cast a shadow over eyes that watched everything and revealed nothing. His boots carried the red dust of miles. His jaw was rough with stubble. His presence rippled through the crowd like a gust of wind before a storm. Crow blinked, stunned. 500? The man nodded once. No swagger, no smirk, no hunger in his gaze, just certainty. "Do I hear 550? Crow asked weakly. Silence. Going once, going twice. Sold to Jake Morrison. A murmur ran through the crowd. Jake Morrison? That recluse from the North Ranch? What's he want with a girl? Clara's head swam. Her knees weakened. She stared at the planks beneath her feet, too afraid to lift her eyes. Boot steps approached. Slow, steady, measured. A hand touched her elbow. Gentle, careful. Not grabbing, not claiming. Just steadying. "Can you walk?" the man asked. His voice was deep, calm, nothing like the jeering tones she'd heard all afternoon. Clara forced herself to look up. Jake Morrison stood tall and broad-shouldered, his weathered face carved by years of sun and sorrow. His green eyes held something she hadn't seen in weeks, something she almost didn't recognize anymore. Humanity. She nodded, her voice gone. He helped her down from the platform with quiet ease, guiding her through the parted crowd. Men stepped aside, some with respect, others with confusion. The women in the doorways watched with wide, stunned eyes. Jake helped her onto a brown mare, tied her reins to his stallion, and mounted up. Clara finally whispered, barely a breath, "Why?" Jake glanced at her, the shadow of his hat falling across his eyes. "Because no one deserves to be sold," he said simply. Then he turned his horse toward the open land beyond Redemption Creek, leading her away from the place where she had been broken. As the town faded behind them, Clara wrapped her arms around herself, wincing as pain shot through her back. The sky burned orange and red, like the world itself was on fire. She didn't know if she'd escaped hell or simply walked into another one. But for the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope rose inside her chest. A stranger had bought her freedom, and she had no idea what that meant. Jake Morrison rode ahead with the easy steadiness of a man who knew every mile of the land beneath his horse's hooves. Clara followed behind him, swaying gently in the saddle. Her back burned where Crow's strap had struck her, and her legs trembled from days of fear and hunger. But she kept her eyes forward. Anything was better than Redemption Creek. The sky darkened into deep shades of red and gold as they rode across the open prairie. Coyotes cried somewhere far off, their voices drifting through the warm wind. Clara hugged her arms around herself, trying to steady her shaking breaths. Jake glanced back at her. "We'll camp soon. You holding up?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, you can say no," he said. "You don't owe me anything." Clara hesitated. Speaking the truth felt dangerous, but lying felt worse.
"I don't know what I owe anyone anymore."
Jake didn't push. He only nodded once and turned forward again. As the last light of day faded, he guided the horses toward a cluster of rocks that blocked the wind. He dismounted and moved with quiet purpose, gathering brush, striking flint, coaxing a fire to life. Clara slid off the mare with shaky legs, nearly falling before catching herself on a rock. Jake noticed. "You hurt?" "No," she whispered, though pain throbbed through her whole body. He didn't argue. He tossed her a bedroll from his pack. "Sit. Rest." Clara sat carefully, wincing as her back pressed against the ground. When Jake returned with a canteen, she hesitated before accepting it. "Drink slow," he cautioned. Cool water touched her tongue, and her eyes stung with sudden gratitude. She hadn't felt something clean and gentle in weeks. Jake handed her a strip of dry beef and a chunk of hardtack. She ate slowly, her empty stomach twisting with each bite. Jake didn't watch her. He stared into the fire instead, his jaw tight as if wrestling with his own thoughts. After a long silence, Clara spoke softly. "You said no one deserves to be sold." Jake nodded without looking at her. "That's right. Then why'd you pay $500? He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks drifting upward. "Because if I didn't, someone worse would have." Clara's stomach clenched. The men at the auction had made their intentions clear. "Then what do you want with me?" Her voice trembled. "What am I to you?" Jake finally met her eyes, steady, quiet, honest. "You're a free woman." Clara blinked in confusion. "But you bought me." "I bought your safety, not you." Her breath caught. She felt the truth of it in his tone. Firm, calm, without the hunger she'd seen in the other men. "You can stay with me at the ranch," Jake said softly. "Work, eat, rest. When you've earned enough to pay back what I spent, you're free to go anywhere you want." Clara stared at him, stunned. Freedom. The word felt too heavy to hold. "You're not going to make me." She couldn't finish the question. Jake's voice tightened. "Clara, I'm not that kind of man." She felt her throat tighten. Tears welled, hot and unwanted. She turned her face away and wiped them quickly. Jake stood, giving her space. "There's salve in this tin," he said, setting it near her. Good for the cuts on your back. Use it if you want. He moved to check the horses. Letting her decide for herself, Clara opened the tin with trembling hands. The scent of herbs drifted up, cooling, soothing. She couldn't reach all the welts, but she managed to spread some across the ones she could touch. The sting eased a little. By the time Jake returned, she had wrapped herself in the blanket and lay on the bedroll, staring up at the star-filled sky. "Get some sleep," he said quietly as he sat against a rock. His rifle lay across his knees, his eyes scanning the horizon. "I'll keep watch. You don't have to." "Yes," he murmured. "I do." Clara closed her eyes. For the first time since the attack on the wagon train, sleep didn't feel like a trap waiting to snap shut on her throat. It felt like something she had earned. She drifted off to the sound of Jake's steady breathing and the crackle of the fire. Morning came in soft gold. Clara woke slowly, her back aching but her mind clearer. Jake was already up, packing their gear. "You hungry?" he asked. "Yes," she admitted. He handed her a biscuit from his pack. "We'll reach the ranch by afternoon." Clara mounted the mare with more confidence than yesterday, though her body still protested. The ride was quieter this time, less frantic, less desperate. Clara watched the land open before them. Rolling hills, tall grass, distant mountains fading into the sky. Jake broke the silence first. "You from a big town?" "From Ohio," she said. "A farming community. Nothing grand, but safe." He nodded. "Good country. What about you?" she asked. "Born out here," he said. "Raised on dust and cattle." Clara studied him. The lines in his face, the calm in his voice, the quiet strength in his shoulders. A man shaped by land and loss. They rode side by side as the sun climbed higher. Clara began to notice little things. How Jake always placed his horse between her and any open land. How he slowed his pace when hers faltered. How he checked the sky like he knew it personally. By midday, they crested a hill. Below them sat a modest ranch, weathered buildings, a barn, a fenced corral, and a house with a porch that faced the wide open land. "Home," Jake said quietly. Clara exhaled, the words settling deep. He led her down the hill, tied the horses, and helped her dismount. Her legs shook when her feet hit the ground, but Jake steadied her gently. Inside, the house smelled of dust and old wood. It was worn, quiet, and lonely, but safe. "Your room's back there," Jake said, pointing to a small door. "You can rest while I tend to the animals." Clara hesitated. She turned to face him. "Jake, thank you for everything." He paused, hat in hand, eyes softening. "You don't need to thank me, Clara. Just heal. That's enough." She stepped into the small bedroom, closed the door, and finally let herself breathe. For the first time since the attack, she felt the faintest spark of something she thought she'd lost forever. A reason to hope. Clara was hanging laundry in the warm morning sun when she saw the dust cloud rising in the distance. At first, she thought it might be riders passing through the valley. But then the dust thickened. The riders grew clearer. Too many, moving too fast. Her blood turned cold. "Jake," she called, dropping the damp sheet. "Jake!" He stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth. One look at the horizon was enough. His jaw tightened. His eyes sharpened. "Hawkins," he said. Clara's heart hammered. "What do we do?" "You go inside," he said firmly. "Lock the door. Get the rifle. I won't leave you alone." His voice softened.
"You're not leaving."
"You're guarding." That was different. That was partnership. Clara nodded once and ran for the house. Jake stepped into the yard while the riders thundered closer. 8 men, all armed. They reined their horses in a rough half-circle, dust swirling around them like a storm cloud. Jed Hawkins rode forward, his sneer wide and rotten. "Mornin', Morrison," he drawled. "Thought we'd pay a friendly visit. See how the girl's settling in." Jake didn't flinch. "Stain't your business. We want what's ours." "She ain't yours. Jake said calmly. Hawkins smirked. Everything is if you've got the spine to take it. Clara stood behind the window, rifle raised. Her hands trembled, but her aim was steady. She prayed they couldn't see her shaking. Hawkins walked his horse closer. "Look here," he said loudly. $500 is a lot for one man to pay for a girl. I'll offer you 6. Cash. Profit for you. Freedom for her. Everyone wins. Jake didn't move. She's not for sale. Hawkins' smile vanished. Everything's for sale. Clara stepped out onto the porch, rifle aimed straight at him. Not me, she said quietly. The men shifted uneasily. Several horses sidestepped, sensing the tension. Hawkins' eyes narrowed. Well, well. Morrison's teaching you tricks. He taught me respect, Clara replied. Something you never learned. You watch your tongue, girl, Hawkins snapped, or someone'll cut it out. Jake moved then, just enough that the challenge was clear. You take one step toward her, he said, and I'll put you in the ground. Something ugly flickered across Hawkins' face, but even he wasn't foolish enough to draw first against 2 people with rifles pointed at him. Fine, he said, turning his horse. We'll be back. And next time, Morrison, we won't be talking. The riders galloped away, leaving dust and dread behind them. Jake hurried to Clara, taking the rifle gently from her hands. You all right? He asked. Clara nodded, though her heart still pounded. They'll return. Yes, he said honestly, but so will we. The next weeks were heavy with tension. Jake slept light, one hand near his gun. Clara kept the shotgun close when she worked outside. They spoke little about the threat, but both felt it like a storm building on the horizon. Still, life went on. Clara cooked and cleaned and tended the chickens. She learned ranch chores from Jake, learned how to mend fences, how to repair harness leather, how to scatter feed without getting pecked. She learned his habits, his kindness, the quiet grief he carried for the wife and daughter he'd buried years ago. He learned her bravery, her stubbornness, her deep loneliness, her fierce will. They fit together the way 2 wounded people sometimes do, carefully, unexpectedly, naturally. One evening, as Clara kneaded dough at the table, Jake paused in the doorway, watching her. You look at home, he said softly. She froze, flour dusting her hands. The words warmed her like sunlight. I feel safe, she admitted. Jake stepped inside, voice rough. Good. That's all I wanted. She looked up and met his eyes. Green, steady, warm. Something shifted. He moved closer. She didn't pull away. His hand came up slowly, giving her every chance to step back. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek. Clara, he whispered. Her breath caught. The warmth of his touch spread through her, gentle and careful. Like he feared she'd shatter. I'm not afraid of you, she said softly. He exhaled shakily. I'm afraid of hurting you. You won't. Their foreheads touched. For a long, quiet moment, neither of them moved. Then a sound shattered the peace. Hoofbeats. Fast. Many. Jake dropped his hand. Clara grabbed the rifle. Inside, he ordered. No, she said, surprising them both. I'm standing with you. Jake hesitated. She stepped closer. We face this together. He nodded. The riders poured into the yard, more than before. 15, maybe 20. Hawkins at the front, hatred carved into every line of his face. This ends tonight, Hawkins shouted. Jake raised his gun. Clara raised hers beside him. You ought to know something, Jake said calmly. I don't scare easy, and she don't run anymore. Clara's hands trembled, but her aim never shifted. Hawkins smirked. Kill the man. Take the girl. His men reached for their guns, and the world exploded into gunfire. Jake fired first. Clara fired second. Bullets tore through the night. Horses screamed. Men shouted. The porch railing splintered beside Clara's arm. She felt heat whip past her cheek as a shot grazed the air inches from her. Clara! Down! Jake shouted. She ducked behind a post, reloading with shaking hands. Jake moved with sharp, controlled precision, dropping 2 riders in seconds, but there were too many. A bullet slammed into the doorframe, inches from Clara's head. Splinters stung her cheek. Her pulse roared in her ears. She fired again, hitting a man who'd aimed at Jake's back. The fight raged, dust and smoke blurring the world. Then, a new sound. More hoofbeats. Hard, fast. Dozens. Jake stiffened. "Marshal," he breathed. Blue-coated riders surged into the yard, rifles drawn. A booming voice thundered across the chaos. "Federal marshals! Drop your weapons!" Hawkins spun, fury twisting his face. "You traitors!" Marshals surrounded him. His men scattered. Gunfire died as quickly as it had begun. Dust settled. Smoke thinned. 2 marshals hauled Hawkins off his horse, shackling his hands. "This ain't over," Hawkins shrieked. "She was mine." Jake walked forward and punched him so hard the marshal holding him had to adjust his grip. "It's over," Jake said. "She's free." That night the ranch was quiet again. Clara sat on the porch steps, her body trembling from the adrenaline wearing off. Jake lowered himself beside her, wincing from a scrape on his arm. "You saved my life," he said softly. "You saved mine first." They sat in silence, listening to the crickets and the soft wind brushing the grass. Then Jake turned to her. "Clara, you don't owe me a thing. Not money, not labor, not your name." His voice shook. "But if you'll have me, I'd give you mine." Clara's chest tightened. I'm asking you to marry me," he said. "Not out of duty, out of love." Her throat closed. Tears warmed her eyes. "I thought you'd never ask." Jake's smile was soft, stunned, relieved. She took his hand. "Yes." He exhaled, pulled her gently into his arms, and kissed her beneath the silver light of the moon. Safe, whole, home, everything she thought she'd lost, everything she'd found again here, everything she chose, and everything she would build, starting tonight as Clara Morrison.